am here for day 30's live of the Aries Point Road Opener Clear, Align, Activate series. And I thought today would be a good checkpoint considering that we only have 10 more days of this particular round to journey through. Of course, I will be opening up the next in the series of courses, which is the Pitta course. And I'll be opening that up for free to the public once we hit summer solstice. So we'll have a little break from these transformational cycles, but we will be journeying through all the doshas together. And I'll bring in the final one for Vata that will come in the fall, at fall equinox. Okay. And then you'll all be taken care of, and you'll always have access to these lives, these playlists I'll make up for each particular dosha's journey. You'll have access to the courses for free on Cobra's medicine bag for that dosha discovery series, and you'll be set. You can continually journey through it every year, and then I feel like I really did my part and I followed through with my vision of making Ayurveda accessible to everyone, no matter where they are in the world, no matter what their financial situation. I think it's so important for us to know how to really take care of our bodies, and this is such valuable preventive care. Ayurveda can really help you ward off some illnesses. Hello, good to see you. I thought we'd just do a little drop in around Ayurveda today since we got 10 more days together. I thought it was a good check in point. I also wanted to just give a check in on how I'm feeling. I want to hear how you all are feeling. I also want to know if you all have any questions. And I just wanted to talk about this week's lesson, Fortify, and how to really embody that lesson in your earth walk this week, as well as just getting you kind of prepared for the final week. Oh, right. I know, it's amazing. It's amazing how quickly things turn around when you're doing this kind of work. That's what I love about Ayurveda is it's so simple, you know? It's so simple, and we have access to everything we need to bring healing to ourselves all around us. And it begins with us and getting in touch with our own natural rhythms, getting in touch with the circadian rhythm, which we talk about this week in Fortify, which is the lesson. And I did review it. I went ahead and gave it a read. It's been a year since I visited the material. So sometimes I go through the course that I created and I'll look and go, ooh, let's add this, so they kind of get updated every year that I go through. But it's really been beneficial for me. It didn't look so much like a cleanse either. The protocols were all decadent. Yeah. Well, see, that comes from my background as an intuitive eating counselor. That comes from also my history and my experience with my own challenges with anorexia, later became bulimia. But instead of purging, I kind of swung between, um, you know, emotional eating binges to excessive exercise and food restriction to try to balance out behaviors. So that's what happened when I started to go through my recovery process from anorexia. It morphed, it shifted, and I developed a whole new eating disorder. It took a long time to unravel that, but it's been a long time now, 27 years recovered. So I feel really good about that. But it was a long, tough road. And I faced a lot of challenges along the way. And so that is really informed by my personal experience with that and what I see so many people struggle with. And in particular, the way Ayurveda has been distorted as it came to the West. Ayurveda largely has become like a diet. It's become like a fad diet in the West where there's all these lists, yes foods, no foods, and it's very structured and rigid. And that's not Ayurveda at all. And so as I dive deeper into my studies of Ayurveda, it became very clear that Ayurveda is actually totally harmonious with intuitive eating. And it is an intuitive approach. It's about listening to your body, listening to when your body says you're hungry, and that's when you should feed yourself. It's also about taking it sort of the next level up, though, from intuitive eating in the respect that it brings in the piece of the bodily systems and how your systems function and how you can work in harmony with those circadian rhythms so you can have maximum vitality and radiance and health because you're just in the natural flow of how your body works. It's like we hear this a lot, like in diet culture, they always talk about, oh, stop eating after 8 p.m., but there's not really any talk about why they say to do that. It's always just based on an aesthetic kind of end goal. Like, well, you don't want to put on more weight. You'll put on more weight if you, eat after 8 p.m. Okay, but they don't talk about any of the foundational relevance of that. And it's actually that all of your digestive organs go through their detoxification process at night. So if you're burdening your body with food and your body has to divert energy from detoxification instead to the breaking down of a meal, then you actually start to get this kind of like backlog of toxins in your system. Things don't eliminate properly the way they're supposed to. That's how we get ama formation. I mean, it's a whole cascade chain reaction. And it helps if people don't, get too rulish either, around food, because there's always going to be exceptions to that rule. I mean, there's going to be times where, let's say, you go out to see a concert, you're out late with your friends, you stop by like the Denny's on the way home to get a little, after concert grub, it happens. It's life. You're not always going to eat perfectly. You're not always going to, eat, before 8 p.m. There's going to be exceptions to that. And how can we not make it, go beyond that? Oh, I know what you meant. I know what you meant. That's why I'm explaining why I made it like that. Why I made it like that, because a lot of Ayurveda in the West is extremely rigid. It's been distorted in that way. And so you'll see a lot of really hard to manage recommendations coming through that aren't realistic for life, to live as life. It's also because I'm not doing a panchakarma cleanse in the capacity of these courses as it would be done if you were to receive it, right? If you were to receive it, all your food would be prepared for you. You'd be weighted on hand and foot. You'd be receiving all kinds of body treatments. Your only job would be to just let go and receive, so you wouldn't even have to think about what you were eating or anything like that. And so I presented it as such because I wanted people to get out of their heads and have a process of really ingraining new patterns of behavior, new healthy habits by moving through a period of 40 days. I really did a lot of actual like field research. I even had a friend that allowed me to lead them through a 40-day panchakarma because I just really wanted to see, like, can this be as effective as what's able to be achieved when we do it in like a clinical capacity, like when we're doing it in a healing center and we got multiple practitioners working with a client. Are we able to achieve the same results if we do a panchakarma self-care style? And how would that be applicable? Because you got to make it work with real life if people are going to enter into self-care. So they can't have a lot of like really complicated recipes, and they can't have, no wiggle room for just day-to-day life. There has to be some fluidity and some flexibility. And so that's how it kind of became this concept for me of panchakarma life. It's a way of life. You can go through these 40-day cycles. And I also liked 40 because a lot of times when I'm doing panchakarma, I like to work with mantra and have a specific mantra that's sort of holding holding the energy and the intention of why I'm going through Panchakarma, because I always do a couple things when I enter into Panchakarma. The first thing I do is I really set my vision, like, what is it I'm wanting to achieve by doing this focused work, this focused self-care, and diving really deep into this. And I also consider what dosha season it is. That factors into some of my health goals. But I set like my targets, like what I'm hoping to achieve. And then I'll usually, feel out what mantra I want to work with during that time. Because I like to bring a lot of roots in. I like to bring a lot of the roots of Ayurveda in when I'm working with Ayurveda. And I'll pick a mantra that really captures the intention of what I'm working through. And most mantra practices, in order to gain the CDs or the power of the mantra, you have to work with it for 40 days consistently. So I kind of bring that into my practice. And it was sort of that whole concept of, you know, um, the mala and doing the mantra and the 40-day practice that gave me this idea of creating a self-care panchakarma where I could kind of guide people in how they can apply it in their own lives and in their own way. And part of that also meant looking at how can we make this like really enjoyable, right? How can we make it really enjoyable? How can we bring the pleasure into the experience and not have people look at cleansing and release work and this kind of stuff, diving into the shadow, all of these different elements that get employed? How can we help support people and not looking at it like it's some kind of drudgery, or that it's unmanageable, that this is something we only do sometimes, and instead have it really be able to be integrated into daily life because it is so enjoyable, because it is so sustainable, because it is so easy. Ted just gave an affirmation. So yeah, and I'm a big proponent too of, like, there's this misconception about healthy food, that healthy food has to be gross, or that that it has to taste like cardboard, or that healthy food can't also include treats, and there aren't ways to make treats that actually are nourishing, that have nutritional value. And how when you bring in more of these kind of treats, you find you want the other kind of like refined sugar stuff less. So it's all been done very purposefully. The way I created all the different recipes in there and brought all those components in, I always want to have that aspect of pleasure and decadence and enjoyment, because it's what you enjoy that you'll consistently do. If something is a pleasure, you'll consistently do it. You'll be committed to it because the payoff is so huge, right? You get the instant gratification and you get the long-term reward. So the more that I can weave that in, and some stuff, I mean, I kind of apply it to everything too. I mean, even with exercise, it's not about forcing yourself to do, some kind of exercise because you want to achieve an end goal. If you're not enjoying the exercise you're doing, then you're going to be in this position where, you're going to give up on exercise after so long because it's just drudgery. You won't look forward to it. So it was all about engagement and making things exciting and enjoyable. And so that kind of feeds right into this week's lesson, Fortify. Anything that's going to lay a solid foundation that we can build upon in the future, it has to be something that, you're invested in. And one of the best ways to make sure you're invested in it is that you actually enjoy this thing that you're creating, that you're building, that you're establishing in your life. If you don't enjoy it, if it makes you miserable, you're never going to stick to it. It doesn't matter how healthy it could be. And it's this like understanding that health is also a pleasure, that health can be enjoyable, that healthy foods can be delicious, that exercise can be fun, that it can actually feel good. But in order for us to unlock those pleasure centers in terms of how we address our health, we really have to be able to get in touch. We have to get in touch with that intuitive nature. We have to get in touch with our instincts. We have to feel things through. And if something, if we try something, it's like, well, I like this aspect of it, but this didn't work so well for me, then we can kind of like tweak it. We can adjust it to make it work for us. And that's really how you make Ayurveda your own. So, this week it's all about looking at these building blocks that have been brought in on that Kapha Reset course. And anybody tuning in who does not know about the Kapha Reset course, it is a course in Ayurveda for balancing Kapha dosha, which we do at springtime. It includes a cleanse and goes into all the different types of self-care, recipes, everything is just everything's laid out for you. And I used to charge for the course, but I'm moving away from my Ayurvedic work to head into more of my metaphysical work. And because of that, I wanted to open up all of my Ayurvedic courses and make them free to the public for my dosha discovery series. So you can find that on cobrasmedicinebag.com. And if you look on the homepage, you'll see a beautiful green butterfly, a little write up about the course under it. And there's a free access button there. Just click it and you're right in the course. You don't need to give me your email. There's no sales pitch. There's nothing. This is just me paying it forward and something I feel like I want to do to just respect the roots of Ayurveda, what I learned, and carry forward that spirit of seva, which is a big part of Ayurveda. Seva is about being of service, and it's an important component that I feel like sometimes in westernized Ayurveda, that piece gets lost. And so I felt it seemed fitting to me to sort of like close that chapter in my life by making that available to everybody. Because that was my vision. That was my ultimate vision, to get to a point where I could do that and I could make that accessible. So I hope it serves you well. And I really wanted to put a focus on making sure that these were things that people would really enjoy and also experience like major benefit from, because I know that once that fire gets lit and you're like, oh my gosh, this food tastes so good and I'm really enjoying what I'm eating. And not only am I enjoying what I'm eating, but I'm also seeing the way that my body is responding, that I'm feeling better, I have more energy, my weight is balancing out, I'm feeling stronger, my skin is glowing. I think if you took a picture when you first started this, if you're looking at yourself in the mirror now, you're going to notice how much things have already changed. I already see it in me. A lot has shifted in just like my complexion. A lot of my puffiness in my face is gone. My skin looks more firm. It's got more radiance. I got rid of my malabsorption. I moved a lot of that ama. There was ama yesterday because I had a bunch coming up, but I cleared it out. So it's like this has been interesting for me this time around. I've been noticing like I'll get through a layer of ama and then there's like a deeper layer. So I think, there's something going in real deep this time, getting out some really old stuff out of my system, and it feels good. So we're talking about the Dinacharya. It's very foundational. The Dinacharya is what we're talking about this week for Fortify, the fifth lesson in that course. And it's a pretty important one, okay? Because Kapha is structure. Kapha also rules over structure, like the bone, the actual structure, the muscular structure, the things that, give form to the body, that give it that stability. That's very much Kapha. Just think of that earth energy, it's the earth and the water. It's very like nourished earth. So a lot of stability, but a lot of that nourishment that comes from the lymphatic system, and as well the regulation of that with the immune system, right? So we're really looking at the foundation of what gives us lasting health. We got to have a strong base, we got to have a strong structure, and we also need to make sure that we got our lymph flowing, we got that nourishment coming in, because that is that river of life. So we're looking this week at the Dinacharya, and you'll see outlined in the course, it talks about the different rhythms of the doshas and when it's most ideal to engage in certain activities. Now, do not get too penned in by this, because we live in the West and we got, our schedules, and some of you may work evenings, and, you have to adjust it as it applies to your life to the best of your abilities. But the really important piece is that evening time, especially with the detoxification of your digestive organs. If there's anything you can really get dialed in, getting your evening dinacharya dialed in is probably of the most significance. And I say that because in the evening time, you have all your digestive organs are going through their detoxification process. So if you're able to work yourself to the point where you can start having your dinner a little earlier, which might mean, you kind of have to work with your body a bit, give it a little support, especially if you're used to having a really late dinner, you might have to experiment with this a bit, start to taper it back, start maybe having a heavier meal in the middle of your day, because you'll find that if you get your biggest meal anywhere between noon and 2 p.m., that's during pitta time. And that's when your agni, your digestive fire, and all your metabolic processes are operating at their maximum function, which means that you're really going to break down that food efficiently. You're also going to extract the most energy from it. It's also going to serve you most, because most people are going to be at their busiest points during that time of day. We're naturally meant to kind of like start to wind down after pitta time, so we can kind of relax and come into center. And, we got to address vata at that time. All right. So we're not too, in our nervous system. And then it starts to disrupt our sleep because we're doing things that are vata producing at night, like, sitting there on the computer, or looking at our phones all night, which increases vata energy, or noshing away on like chips and crunchy snack foods, which is very vata, to kind of like relieve tension and anxiety. And these just all create more vata, and that leads to a state of being tired but wired. It affects your nervous system, and then it not only is your detoxification affected, okay, because you're like noshing away at night, snacking away at night, but also your sleep is impacted. So if you can't restore and you can't detox, that's when you start to get this accumulation. That's exactly when you're going to start to get this kapha accumulation in your body. You're going to start feeling kind of dull headed, you're going to find it harder to get out of bed in the morning. You're going to find that your energy starts to flag. Once you hit that mid-afternoon time, you're going to have that slump. The hormones are going to be affected and thrown off. You'll notice that your limbs feel kind of heavy. You're just moving slower. You're not as motivated, and you can start to put on weight. You might deal with bloat issues. It's like this cascade effect, and it all comes from these things that they don't seem like they're a big deal, but it's just we're not moving in the flow of the natural cycle of things, which is what the circadian rhythm is. So, an ideal, from an Ayurvedic perspective, an ideal dinacharya, an ideal flow to your day would be, you would wake up early, as close to sunrise as possible. And you would begin your day first by, doing some kind of bathing, to get yourself prepared for any type of meditative work you're going to do, or any type of kirtan or mantra work you're going to be doing. And so usually, you might want to do an abhyanga in the morning. So you might begin by getting up in the morning, like splashing your face with water and rinsing out your mouth with water and washing your hands, because there's this big piece about kind of this necessary purification. It's like an energetic purification, but it's also a physical purification too, because you're you're cleaning out the toxins, the debris, the stuff that came out of your tear ducts at night while you were sleeping. It also, using a little cool water on the face, it kind of wakes you up. It kind of like snaps you out of that sort of dull, thinking space so you can be a little bit more clear. At least rinsing out the mouth. It's like a purification of the speech, it brings all these pieces in. It's mindfulness and washing the hands. Again, it's just bringing back that piece of like the cleanliness is close to godliness. It's about being mindful of how you're starting your day and attuning your energy to this kind of frequency where you're already entering your day with this sort of mindfulness and awareness about your energy and how you're running it. From there, some people like to do a little yoga, if you want to do an abhyanga in the morning, you could. That's very traditional in Ayurveda. In India, it's a big part of a daily practice for those working with Ayurveda. So you could, after you rinse yourself off, you could put on your oil. You could put on some comfortable clothes. You could get in some sun salutations or even exercise. That would be a great time to exercise if you wanted to get a workout in. It all depends on what you feel like doing. But at least get some movement in. That's usually when it would be a good time to do some sun salutations or some yoga, just to kind of like open the body up for movement for the day. And from there, you can do meditation or, any type of practice you want to center your day. Afterwards, you would bathe. Okay. um, and wash off that oil. You don't want to leave the oil on because it dampens your natural fire. We don't want to do that, especially with kapha. Okay, we're looking to stir the fire up. And then from there, if you were hungry, you would eat. But if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. And in fact, in Ayurveda, the longer that your body is comfortable, extending that fast, which is the time when you had your dinner to when you eat the next day. That's why they call it a breakfast fast. It's you're breaking your fast. And it doesn't matter what time you have your first meal. You could have your breakfast at 2 p.m. It all depends. And so it's really about listening to your body. Because if you have had a damp gut for a long time, and if your digestive fire has been very compromised, it can take a while for that agni to like build up. And, we've been working with the ginger rasayana. We did the 10-day ginger treatment. You're probably wrapping up, that at this point, or you have a few more days left at most likely. When you're doing that, you're getting it primed up. Okay, you're getting your agni fired up, and it's so important that you wait until you feel hungry after having that ginger rasayana before you eat, because if you don't allow that digestive fire to build and you eat and you're not hungry, you're compromising your digestion. This is actually a reason why a lot of people will put on weight. It's because the digestive fire isn't being allowed to build and people are just eating automatically because, we can blame a lot of that on the whole mini meal craze where it was like, yeah, eat 5 to 6 times a day. It's like, that's not so great. First of all, it's not so great for what it does to your insulin response. It actually makes you have more insulin spikes. And you become very dependent on these regular intervals of eating. It can really screw up your blood sugar. Honestly, it takes some time before it reaches that place where you realize this, but it's not the best. It's not the best route. It really isn't, unless your hunger is dictating that. If you get hungry and you need a little something 6 times a day, that's different. But it's really about listening to what your gut is telling you. The reality is, most people, if they listen to their gut, if they listen to their hunger levels, they're not going to be wanting 5, 6 meals a day. I can barely eat one meal a day. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is what and a lot of it has to do with your activity level. Okay. If you just allow your hunger to kind of dictate, then you will know for certain. You will know when you need to eat. Your body will tell you. And you'll also notice that your hunger is not linear. It's like one day you might not be that hungry. But then another day, maybe you've been out and about, you've been doing a lot, or maybe you've been dealing with something stressful, your body's in a little bit of recovery mode, and you'll be like famished all day. You'll be like, oh my God, I just can't stop eating today. I'm so hungry. Your body will let you know. And it's about really respecting your body's rhythms. Fasting 23-hour day really messed me up and stalled me. This cleanse has brought back my hunger. Yeah. And a lot of times that's again, that's part of how I structured it, like bringing that intuitive eating piece in. What I'm presenting in my courses is a morphing together of Ayurvedic principles around nutrition and food with intuitive eating. So I've fused the two together. So some of the things that I bring in are a little different, and people encounter them, in relation to Ayurveda, and they're like, oh, I haven't thought of doing that way. But there's a reason why I have it set up like that. It's to really help people transform their health and at the same time make it realistic and support them in getting back in touch with their body's own natural rhythms, so they can really respect that, because it's a little different for everybody. No one eating style works for everybody. And that was an important part of it for me, is really just like letting people get back in touch with their own rhythm. Your body will do it for you. Your body will let you know when you need less food, when it's good for you to have an extended fast, right? Between your dinner and your next meal. Your body will let you know. Your just appetite just naturally won't be there. And when you do need it, your body will let you know. But that's a key point. If you're somebody who's done a lot of restrictive dieting or withholding food, things along these lines, you can kind of get out of touch with your hunger signals. And it takes time to relearn that. And we start that with mindful eating. That's where the intuitive eating piece comes in, about really not being distracted when you eat, and letting your meal time be a time of deep nourishment, not where your energy is divided. Also, the chakra center. Um, the Chopper Center did a study. They did a study that involved like monitoring, two different groups of people who ate distracted, who were watching TV and all of these things, eating comparable diets, okay, and people who ate with mindfulness. That was only the only difference. One group ate distracted, like eating in front of the television or eating while on their phone, or these kind of things, and the other group just ate mindfully, where they sat, they enjoyed their meal, they took their time, they really chewed their food, they enjoyed the flavors, and they found that there was better nutrient absorption among the group that ate mindfully. And it was significant. It wasn't just like, there was something like 50% better nutrient absorption among the group that was eating mindfully. It was put out by the Chopper Center Institute. So check that out. I was pretty like blown away by that. That's pretty significant. So, there is this piece too. It's about really an exercise in nourishment. Eating, it nurtures more than just, your physical body. It also nurtures your spirit, it nurtures your mind, it nurtures you emotionally, to give yourself this time to take a break and drop in and just really allow yourself to receive the nourishment and the gratitude as well, that wow, think of all the hands that were part of bringing this food to my plate, and think of all the ways that the earth provided this sustenance for me. It's when you eat in that way, you're eating from a different place where you really feel connected to the experience of eating. You also feel deeply connected with your body. And it's so different from how we eat in the West, where, people are like driving in their cars, shoving food down their throats, or they're, eating a muffin as they're running out the door to go to work, or they're eating in front of the TV. They just got like a big bag of chips and they're noshing away. And there's ways that you can still have your chips and watch TV from time to time if you really want to. Like, you don't have to give up things that you really enjoy, but it's about learning how to, at least if you want to just get lost in a TV show with some popcorn, it's about, maybe making yourself, a bowl of popcorn, that you can eat that and enjoy that, and at least you're bringing that mindfulness in, where it's not like the bottomless, big old tub of popcorn, or the whole bag of chips, where you're really using it as a way to totally distract yourself, disconnect. Okay. So, yeah, it's very interesting. It does take time. It does take time. If you've been used to ignoring your hunger for a while, it will take time. But that's why I bring the ghee in. And that's why we bring in the 10-day ginger treatment, because it helps turn your signals back on. In fact, when I've worked with people that have struggled with eating disorder, that's one of the primary things I work with, is getting their Agni on board. And a lot of times their Agni is really snuffed out. Why? Because they just haven't had any nourishment coming in. And if they are somebody who's like got an emotional eating issues or binge eating issues, they likely have kapha imbalance. They got, damp gut, and it's put out the digestive fire. So it's one of the first places I go to, just like, all right, let's get the fire going there, because then you're going to actually feel it. You won't be able to deny it. Like once your Agni gets roaring again, like it will very clearly let you know when it's time to eat. And it's so helpful. So, yeah, but if you're not hungry, you don't need to. You don't need to. Your body doesn't need it, and this is where it comes about being very aware of the different signs of hunger, because sometimes people miss hunger until they're at that point where they feel like hangry, and then you went too far. You want the hunger to be set, you know. What does set hunger look like? You might notice your mouth is watering because the amylase is starting to produce to get ready to digest your food. Digestion begins in the mouth. The first cue is you start thinking about food, right? You're like, food comes to mind, okay? But here's the cue. It's like, okay, why are you thinking about the food? Are you actually physically hungry, or are you thinking about the food because you're feeling depressed, or you're trying to distract yourself from something that's coming up emotionally, in terms of people who use food for comfort, use food to soothe their emotions, things like that. And that's when it helps, just put that left hand on the belly, and you can put the right hand on top and close your eyes and just, ask yourself, am I hungry? And you can lean in and you can feel, do you got the start of hunger pangs in your tummy? I'm not talking about your stomach is trying to eat itself, but maybe it's gurgling a little bit, maybe your tummy's talking to you a little bit, maybe you feel that emptiness in there, just the beginnings of those hunger pains. That's set hunger. you know if you tune in there, you're like, I don't know, you're not hungry. I always tell people that if you tune in there and you're like, I don't know, then you're not. You'll know when you are. You will feel it. You will feel when you're hungry. But initially, you might have to do that for a bit, back and forth. So, then, from there, morning time earlier in the day is good for doing like kind of clerical type of work, getting back to messages, doing any of your social media rounds for those of you who work online, doing kind of office type work, running errands, things along those lines, lighter work, and then you head into that noon to 2 p.m. is the ideal time to have your lunch. And that's the ideal time to have the largest meal of the day, because your Agni is at its highest. It's also when your energy demands are going to be at their highest, at the height of the day, so that's like really making sure you have a nice, big, leisurely lunch, you know, because you can really, you can burn off that fuel at that time. It's not going to just sit in your gut, and it's not going to disrupt your sleep, and it's not going to, bog you down. You're going to be burning off that meal. That's when you can really, put on a nice spread for yourself. You can have like some kind of main entree, and you could do a nice spring green salad on the side, maybe have some soup with that, maybe even have a little something for dessert, a cookie, or, anything like that, have some nice warm bevy with it. really, and enjoy it. Like take your time and allow yourself to really savor that meal. And then, you're going to be burning that off for most of the day, for the rest of the day. And then by the time you hit dinner, it's like something light, something light. And best in Ayurveda, they would say if you could finish dinner by 6, that would be, chef's kiss. But that's really hard for a lot of us in the West to achieve that, just with the way our daily schedules are kind of set up. We live in a society where it's like go, 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 all the time, pack it in as much as you can. Our schedules are really topsy turvy. That might be really hard for some people. So don't be hard on yourself if that's not achievable. Really, as long as, you can wrap it up at 8 p.m. on most days, that's really going to be beneficial for you. It will make a big difference, but I think it's important to understand why, it's not because, oh, it's going to make me have this like little waist. But yeah, it absolutely will help your cortisol levels. Okay. Let's look at it hormonally. Like when people get that weight around the middle, which is the weight you want to be most aware of because it is the precursor for all kinds of inflammation and disease in the body. We do want to be mindful of this. All right. It is something to be aware of. There are higher diabetes risks, heart disease risks. So, when you have, your waist over a certain circumference, it's different for men and women. And I don't remember the exact measurements. I don't remember the exact measurements. I will find out and I will pin it in the comments, okay? But there is a certain point where if your waist is over a certain measurement, you are kind of heading into syndrome X zone. And that can be a lot of metabolic dysregulation. And if your metabolism is off, it doesn't just affect your body composition, okay? It goes beyond that. It can affect you hormonally, it can affect your energy levels. It affects a lot of processes in the body. So it is something to be mindful. It's a sign of being in a pro-inflammatory state. We want to address that, and by getting in touch with the circadian rhythm and preventing that imbalance in the body where your body can't do its detox work because you're eating late at night and it's disrupting your sleep and affecting your restoration cycles. That can lead to hormonal imbalance. It can lead to buildup of cortisol in your system, and cortisol will wreak havoc on your health. Cortisol elevation is a huge precursor for disease as well, and it sparks off a lot of inflammatory processes in the body. So if you can do by 6, that's awesome. But if you can at least do it by 8 on most nights, you're going to really experience the difference. And at first, it might be a little bit challenging if you're used to eating later than that, but there's easy ways to work with it. You could start turning to beverages at night that will actually support your digestive detoxification, but at the same time, they'll feel nourishing. And you won't miss it after just a couple days of just getting things shifted up because you're going to wake up with more energy. You're going to feel better. You're not going to feel groggy. You're not going to have digestive issues. You're not going to be having things like acid reflux or feeling bloated. You're going to find your elimination improving. You're going to feel so much better. Your skin will improve. Your sleep will be better. Like the payoff is in just making the adjustments to make it happen and doing what you can to make it easier. So what are my kind of go-tos for, if I get hungry late at night and I really want something, but I know that's going to disrupt my digestion, I will turn to something like I'll make myself a golden milk. I'll get a nice like coconut milk, and I like to use coconut milk because we're talking about ojas foods this week too. So I'll have something that really builds the ojas in my body because I see that as very nourishing. It's really enhancing the vitality. It's really giving me that fortification I might need at that time without bogging down the detoxification process going on in my body, and actually may support that detoxification process. So I'll do a golden milk with like coconut milk, and I like to use the coconut milk that comes with the cream on top in the can. And I'll put like a nice, like good, like rounded tablespoon of that cream right in there with the coconut milk, and some turmeric, some cardamom. I like to put in a little rose water, some saffron is lovely if you have it, a little cinnamon, and I'll warm that up. I'll warm that up on the stove and I'll just sip that. And a lot of times that's what you want. You want that nourishment. And there's even a beautiful ritual you can do with that that was passed down to me from Francesca de Grandis. That's about putting the nourishment, into the milk. So you can even make a ritual of it, like a nourishing ritual of it, where you view it as mother's milk. And we are building this right now. We're building that divine feminine, uh, Shakti energy in the body. And as we prepare, we're fortifying the groundwork for really calling that divine feminine in the 6th week. So this would be, a wonderful time to bring in this ritual. You might want to experiment with this over the next few days and just see how it feels to you. But so you look at this beautiful milk that you created and you view it as the mother's milk. And then you name a few qualities that you want to imbibe, that you want to drink in, a few ways that you feel like you need to be nourished, nurtured, that you want the mother to come in and bring that energy in. So you could put love into that milk. You could put beauty into that milk. You could put softness into that milk. You could put peace into that milk. Whatever your soul, your mind, your body, your spirit is needing in that moment, feel really nurtured and nourished. You can put those qualities into the milk, envision them entering the milk. You can even like stir them in with your finger, calling each one in a clockwise direction. And then you drink it in, you drink in the mother's milk and you imbibe it. And it can be a very simple ritual, a sadhana, they would call that in Ayurveda, which is a practice that makes the mundane spiritual, the everyday practice that elevates it to a devotional practice. That's a sadhana. And so it's a way you can really nurture your spirit, nurture yourself emotionally, mentally, on all levels, your body too. And you'll find that bringing something like that in, or a beautiful, like all spice chai, something along those lines, you wouldn't want to do like a black tea based chai at night, because that's just going to be, elevating your energy, which is going to impact vata. Nighttime is vata's time. So we want to calm everything down. And so that's a way that you can kind of feel that stabilization. And in fact, if you find yourself getting hungry a lot at night, and it sort of makes you want to go towards snacky foods, that's a big clue that your vata is needing more stabilization. So maybe you need to look at making sure you're getting complete protein with your meals when you're eating. There might be a need to bump up your protein a little bit. There might also be a need to make sure you're getting in a little bit more of those EFAs, those essential fatty acids, those healthy fats, just to give your vata, your nervous system, a little more stabilization, because that can be a sign of late night noshing. It can often be stemming from like just nervous energy. And a lot of that has to do with how out of harmony we are with the nighttime cycles, right? Nighttime, we kind of like redo all the things that ramp us up when it should be a time to wind down. So nighttime is when a lot of people will, they'll be on their phones, or they'll be on social media, or they'll be watching TV, and all of this stuff really like ramps up vata. And it's fine to do some of that, but it's really important, like maybe an hour before you plan on turning in, to turn off the electronics, because they are vata producing, those messages, they can wait until tomorrow. It's important to have a close to the busyness of the day and restructure the way you close your night, just that last hour. It can make such a big difference. Dim the lights in your home if you want. light some candles. You can even light some candles with intention, bring a little warmth into your atmosphere. Maybe light some beautiful incense, or you can even get a nice potpourri going on the stove. Maybe you're making yourself, a beautiful chai that can act as a potpourri. I'm sure you found that, and adding a little orange peel in there is really lovely for the way it can kind of brighten while warming the scent of a home if you're doing like a nice allspice chai at night. So it kind of serves two purposes. Plus, it's bringing a little moisture into the air as well. So it has like sort of humidifying action, which can be helpful for Vata too. But it's just creating that space and then doing something just to relax. It's a good time to pamper yourself, maybe give yourself a face mask or, massage your feet, do a little foot soak, massage your feet, or just do something relaxing, listen to some relaxing music, or you could even put on some kind of like guided meditation or hypnosis session or anything along these lines to just help yourself let go. You could do a little restorative yoga or read a book, you know, something a little different, get creative, you know, do a little painting or a little coloring. It's it's so essential. And then you're going to find that you're able to wind down. It's a really important piece for those who struggle with sleep disturbances or insomnia. I have been adding orange peel and don't fret when I've walked away from boiling pot that's steamed into the air. It's good smelling. It is. And it's also very purifying. Florida water is great for purifying lower vibrational energy. So anytime you're working with orange blossom or, that orange peel, it's very helpful. It like cleanses the energy. And a lot of those different spices that you use in chai, in a spice chai, they also are very warding. Cinnamon is good for warding. It also invites in warmth and sweetness. Um, ginger, ginger is really good for clearing out negative energy. Um, and it's very warming as well, so it kind of brings warmth into the atmosphere, which can be very helpful for Vata to just calm everything down. But ginger is very protective. It does guard against kind of lower vibrational energies. You can put, star anise in there. That's also warding. Like a lot of the stuff that's put in there is warding, which makes sense because it stimulates Agni. And Agni is not only the digestive fire, but it's also that transformational fire that you offer up, kind of like all of the Ama, the lower vibrational energies, the old, tamasic, kind of stuff that's been stuck in your system that needs to be transformed and released. That Agni helps do that too, you know. I love this cup too. It's not filled all the way, but I like the way it feels in my hand, right? But sometimes I do fill it with like a big herbal chai or something like that, or if I do like agua fresca. But yeah, I love all kinds of big bold things. I'm sort of drawn to big bold things, big bold jewelry. I love stuff like this, and it's really beautiful. And I'm spoiled for all kinds of pottery because of the amazing work that Danielle at Flux Blossom on Instagram does. I've been gifted, the beautiful copolera and all kinds of mugs and stuff. But this mug is just, I don't know, it's my go-to. You always have a favorite mug, right? I use the mug Danielle made me for offerings to Oshun. It's interesting. Everything Danielle's given me that she's made, I've used in some ritual capacity. I don't know why, but that's just how her stuff resonates for me. It's like there's a spiritual focus for it. But yes, I love my giant cup. I love my giant cup. So this week you're going to be working on making your dinacharya. You're going to be making your daily practice, and this is going to be your foundational practice. It's a practice that you'll carry forward with you after our 40 days. And so it's so essential that you really think about what works for you. And as you make this up, it's not formulaic, okay? Be mindful of those times, be mindful of, what would be ideal. Also, look realistically at your schedule. What is a maintainable practice for you? And that's what's most important. You want your lifestyle to be such that it's something you can do for the rest of your life, because anything you're doing that's temporary, like, oh, I'm just doing this for now, and then when I get my goals, I'm done with that, it will sabotage you every time. It'll sabotage you every time. So it's very helpful to really look realistically about where you're at right now. Now, where you're at right now and where you may be come summer solstice, when we enter into our next round and we work with the Pitta course, may be very different. So also understand that this is not static. The dinacharya you make for yourself at this time, it can ebb and it can flow as you grow with it. All right. So what it looks like now doesn't have to be your final resting point, and it might change with the seasons. There might be, you might discover, for instance, that as you head into summer with the sun, being at its zenith and moving into pitta time, you'll have more energy. You'll want to be on the go more. You might want to pick up your exercise. You might want to do something that, takes it up a notch. You might be more focused. You might be more driven. How your day looks and what works for you at that time might be very different as to where you are right now, as you're just getting back into the swing of things after the heaviness of winter. Likewise, when you head into Vata season, you'll be like, kind of like, okay, I'm ready to bring things to kind of like the home stretch so I can enjoy my harvest. And I'm ready to get winding down, So it's really about learning how to move in harmony with those cycles. So you're just looking at your dinacharya for right now, for spring season and where you're at right now. So don't judge it, whatever it looks like, and be okay with whatever healthy changes you can incorporate in that. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't belittle yourself. Don't judge yourself. This is about you working in what I call progressive uh, resistance. Okay. Progressive resistance is a strength training term, which it's kind of funny. I'm bringing it in with Fortify, which is all about the foundation and the structure and the stability and the strengthening. Um, it's in strength training. Progressive resistance is like you work to your edge, right? The edge of what you're able to handle in terms of weight. And that kind of becomes like your new, like your focal point. Like, okay, I lifted, 150 pounds there. So that's my point now, that like I want to work with that resistance point. It's all about me seeing, okay, let's see, I was able to do 150 pounds for one rep. Okay. Can I take it up to two reps the next time? So it's like working with this kind of like this resistance point. It's like pushing edge. Can I take it a little farther? And that does involve really listening to your body and where it's at. So where you're at right now, you got to look at where's your edge. Like, I can take on this right now. This feels doable for me. I can add this practice to my morning. I can add this practice to my evening. I can work with this, midday, in terms of, how I'm, changing the way I view my lunch, whatever changes you can make at this point, accept where you're at, okay? And work with it and just stay connected to your personal experience. And you might find that, your dinacharya shifts. You might make up a new dinacharya each week. Sometimes I work with it like that. It's like, okay, I'm starting here. This week, this is my dinacharya, and I devote myself to that kind of new routine or that new practice through that week. Okay. And then I review it. before I start my next week. You know what? I think I want to add an exercise session here, or I think I want to add. So it's a way to kind of bring in a little bit of that progressive resistance and growth, within my practices, growth with what I want to see for myself in terms of my health. You can absolutely apply this in terms of a personal goal you're trying to reach. Let's say there's something you're wanting to launch, and that was your vision, for this cycle that we're moving through together. You had a vision of something that you wanted to launch, you wanted to get off the ground. Okay. Now you can like look at your dinacharya and you can really make sure you're scheduling in time for that. Focus on that. And that can continue to grow, with you as you travel week by week by week. So it doesn't have to be static. I recommend that you look at the steps that we've already got in place because they are foundational for what could constitute an Ayurvedic daily dinacharya for you. And really looking at, okay, how can I weave in the things that I liked the best that I've experimented with as I've moved through this Kapha reset course? What are the practices that really work for me, that feel really good for me? And go ahead and adapt them as you need to. If you felt compelled, to bring in a certain recipe, you really enjoyed this recipe, maybe you changed it up a little bit. Cool. you know if you really enjoyed working with the salt scrub, and you came up with your own blend or your own rhythm, your own practice with that, cool, incorporate it. This is about you working with these building blocks and making it your own, because you know what's best for you in terms of your health. Nobody else knows better than you what your body needs. Nobody nobody. Okay. And it's all by how you're feeling and your vitality. All right. So there may be one person that tells you like, oh, you shouldn't do that kind of exercise. That's not the best. Let's say you're somebody that is wanting to release weight. I bring it in with kapha. We talk about it with kapha a lot because that is the concern for many that are looking to balance kapha at this time. Okay. You may have one person that tells you, well, only this kind of exercise is going to help you, shed the weight. But, what a lot of people don't realize is one of the best things you can do for getting this weight down around the middle, if you are struggling with that, is walking, just simple walking. And that's for multiple reasons. It's because it's a form of exercise that everybody can do. Walking also supports the digestion. It helps. In fact, if you want to take a walk after your dinner, if you were to add that to your dinacharya, that after I have my dinner every night, I'm going to go for a walk. It doesn't even have to be a long walk. It supports the digestive process. It supports the detoxification process. Walking is also stress relieving. Walking gets you out into the fresh air. Walking gets you out into the sun, which raises your vitamin D, which is so important for hormonal balance. Walking helps lower cortisol. It also puts you in that fat burning zone. Simple walking. It's as simple as that. You don't have to do any crazy exercise if that's not what you feel called to do. It doesn't matter what anybody else tells you. Okay. You may find that you really love to turn on your music and just dance, and it's fun and you enjoy it. Or maybe you like to go out and throw the ball around with your kid. You have fun, or you like to take your dog out, throw the frisbee, whatever. You know, it's movement, it's exercise. And the thing is if you enjoy it, you're more likely to stick with it as well. So look at what really works for you in your life. Look at what's come in so far. What were the building blocks that really resonated with you? What were the self-care practices you really enjoyed, that you can make kind of like a regular part of your weekly schedule? Where could be the best place to fit that stuff in? And how can you kind of rework things a little bit so you can veer away from kind of the focus on numbing out at night, instead to tuning in and getting centered and calming. And I think you'll be really surprised what happens. Those of you who are on a journey to like get in better shape, that maybe have been working out really hard, you've been grinding out the gym, you've been micromanaging every bite of food that goes into your mouth, and you're like, I don't get it. Like nothing's moving, nothing's releasing. Guarantee you it's because your cortisol is too high. And once you get vata stabilized, and once you bring in more calm and bring in more nourishment and bring in more pleasure and more enjoyment, and you start listening to your body and actually doing what your body wants to do instead of forcing it to fit in some structured exercise program that isn't working for you, that's stress producing, you're going to find, oh my gosh, I let go and everything just balances on its own. That's the beauty of the body. The body knows what balances it out. So those circadian rhythms are very helpful, because they let you know what your organs are doing at certain times of the day and how you can best support this vehicle you get to move through life with. And the more you can shift that and to be in alignment with those rhythms, the better off you're going to be. But do what works for you and make it your own. And as long as you're trusting your own intuitive guidance, you're not going to be off the mark with that. You're not going to be off the mark with that. So that's what I would say. And get those steams in. Okay. I'm noticing that I'm getting to some deeper levels of kind of almond to clear. So I'm gonna make sure I bring in those steams this week. It's very important, just clearing out the lungs. Also, we've been in a big cycle of working through shadow stuff collectively. So lungs have to do with grief and all that emotional heaviness. So, really give yourself a chance to get any last remaining bit of the gunk out. It will support you through the spring season. It will support you in terms of allergies. It will support you also in terms of just, the little colds that can come around at this time of year. So it's just a way to really boost your immune system and have you moving forward, feeling really strong and immune system running at top notch, capacity as you move through this season and feeling your best. Did anybody have any questions about this week's lesson 4 to 5? The more you can dial your Dinacharya in this week, the better off you'll be, because next week, for the final week, it's all about receiving. And so we're going to really do deep dive. It's going to get very esoteric. It's going to get very, like lavishing on the love and the pampering, building up that divine feminine energy. It's all about calling in that goddess energy, the compassion in, the softness, the sweetness, melting into the heart. And it culminates with a full day of extreme self care. Self care to the max. That's really what we're going to be diving into. So you'll give yourself an at home panchakarma condensed into one day. And that will really give you a feel of what it's like to truly go into PK. We did a cleanse, but we haven't done the full on panchakarma experience where you eat the really nourishing food and you do all the treatments on one day deep dive. And this can become a regular practice for you, where every week you do this, you dive deep with yourself and you just lavish in self-care, you lavish in nourishing yourself, mind, body, spirit. It's so good for just a regular purification practice, and also for centering your energy, clearing the channel, and filling you up, really, really getting into that place where you can harmonize your energy is such a potent practice. And when you give yourself this full on day, it's amazing. I'm not going to go into that right now, because it's covered in the final week's lesson, but you'll see it's very much a deep dive. But how you formulate your Dinacharya this week, you'll see how these practices can kind of get woven into your week, and then it will kind of guide you in the creation of your own personal Panchakarma day. I like to do Sundays. That's kind of become my standard. But you could make it any day you wanted, after we get through this last week, the 6th week, when we move into that. But I just kind of do like a self-care Sunday. That's my me day. It's my me day to just really give back to myself, let go, relax, enjoy, not answer the phone, not check social media, not be bothered, and just really sink in. And it's a very potent practice. Okay, so it looks like there's not any questions, and I do want to get outside for a walk. I want to take Ted out for a walk and just get some good movement in for him. I will be bringing in another love reading for the spring fever wild card love forecast just to see what's coming in for the spring months. I got Libras up last night. Really interesting stuff for Libra that came in there. Libra, as always, we have some choices to make. But we also have Scorpio. Scorpio will be coming in tonight. So be on the lookout for that. And I'm going to get off of this and I'm going to say goodbye until tomorrow and we'll drop in then. I don't know what I'll do. I'll just have to see what feels right and we'll go with the flow. Okay. So enjoy your day and I'll see you tomorrow.